Hey guys, how's it going? Gilly here from the Retro Oasis, and today I have a video with the full review of the Anbernic RG552. This is a new retro handheld console from Anbernic with a beautiful screen and, well, I don't want to spoil. Let's go to the review. Welcome to the Oasis. Alright, let's start with the specs. The CPU is the RK3399 Hexa-core 64 bits with 2 cores A72 and 4 cores A53 running up to 1.8 GHz. The GPU is the Mali T860, 4 GB of RAM, LPDDR4 and 64 GB of internal storage. A 5.36 inches touchscreen with the resolution being a little bit above Full HD. 1920 by 1152 with the aspect ratio 5:3, and it looks great in this handheld, but we'll talk more about it later. Oh, and it's OCA laminated, meaning there's no space between the screen and the glass. Two 3200 mAh batteries with the total of 6400, and that should give you about 3 to 4 hours of gameplay depending on the game you're playing. In the realm of connectivity, Wi-Fi 2.4 GHz and mini HDMI out. And we have the option of dual boot here, being Android 7.1 or Linux, in this case the Batocera. And right away we can see how similar the RG552 is compared with the other handheld consoles from Anbernic, like the RG351 MP that we have here. And it seems it uses the same D-pad, the same analog sticks, the same select, start, and the same A, B, X, Y buttons. Anyway, as I mentioned, it just looks like a bigger version of this one here. Going really quick over the layout here, on each side of the screen we have the select and start buttons. On the left here the D-pad, underneath here the left analog stick, and this one is the same used on the Nintendo Switch, and it's very common on these Chinese handhelds. Over here the ABXY, an LED light, and the right analog stick. On top we have the shoulder buttons, an exhaust vent, mini HDMI, a headphone jack, 2 USB Type-C ports. The left one is for peripherals and data, and the right one for charging. On the bottom, from left to right, we have one of the stereo speakers, a TF1 memory card slot. This one will only be used if you want to boot with the Linux operating system. You just need to shove the Batocera card in there and turn on the device. A reset button, a function button, a TF2 memory card slot where you're gonna put your games, and the second stereo speaker. On the left we have the volume buttons, and on the right the power button. On the back you have the same rubber grips used on other Anbernic consoles, and a fan intake. Basically this fan takes the air from the back of the console here and blows it out on top. The D-pad has the exactly same size of the other Anbernic handhelds, like the RG351 MP. And the RG351V with 21.7mm. In comparison, the D-pad on the RETROARCH Pocket 2 Plus is 21.5mm, only 0.2mm less. Comparing another device here with similar specs, the Palkitty X18S has a much smaller D-pad with 17.9mm. So 21.7mm is a fair size for a D-pad in my opinion. It's got a medium travel to it and it's nice and soft. And when fully pressed, it sticks out a little bit of the body. I'd say 1 or 2mm. And it's very responsive, even for fighting games. Better than this one, only the one on the RETROARCH Pocket 2 Plus. No complaints here about the D-pad. The analog sticks, well, I don't have much to say about them. If you have a Nintendo Switch or another Anbernic console, you'll be right at home, cause they are exactly the same. I personally like concave analog sticks, like the ones used on the Xbox controller. But I used this model so much, I got used to it. And you can press on these. You have R3 and L3 here. And as you can see from this angle here, they don't stick out too much. Both of them. And that would help if you were willing to put this device in your pocket. But due to its size, I don't think that's an option. And just to compare to other devices, it has 14.5mm. The one on the Palkitty X18S is smaller with 13.3mm. And one of the biggest I have here is the one on the GPD XP with 16.7mm. A, B, X and Y are a bit smaller than I anticipated, with 7.6mm. Both the RG351MP and the RG351V measure 7.8mm, 0.2mm more than the 552, which definitely it's not a considerable difference. They have the exactly same size of the Palkitty X18S. The biggest difference would be in comparison with the RETROARCH Pocket 2 Plus, with 6.9mm. They're also very responsive, and I'd say medium to long travel here. And when fully pressed, as you can see, they stick a bit out of the body, just like the D-pad. And I think that's the first time Anbernic uses different colors on these buttons. Alright, going to the shoulder buttons, they are very clicky and have very short travel. They don't have the micro switches used on the GPD XP, but they have a very fast response time. L1 and R1 follow the curve of the body here. And it doesn't matter if you press on the sides or on top, it will compute the press. One thing that I noticed is that my R2 needs a bit more press than the L2. My L2 is perfect, but I felt this difference on the R2. But I really think this is an issue with my unit. And even though this is happening, it's not impacting the way I play the games. Now, one thing that I think that's interesting to mention is this reset and the F button, the function button. The reset, you know, press it and you reset the console. The function button, if you are on Android, it will act as a home button. I just thought Anbernic chose poorly putting those two buttons that look so similar, so close to each other. A couple of times I went to press the function button to go to home and I pressed the reset button. So this is one thing you need to be aware when you're using these buttons. About the build quality, this is a console from Anbernic, so there's not much to complain here. As expected, the quality is very good. Just like the other handhelds from the company, the finish is excellent and everything fits the way it's supposed to. You really have that premium feeling when you hold the device. There is a black color option, but I decided to go with this one here, the silver. And when you put your sights on for the first time, it really looks like it's made of metal, but it's not. It's made of a high quality, thick plastic. The shell here is matte, but still gives you the impression it's brushed metal. It looks very nice. And the cool thing is that your fingerprints, it won't really show on this surface. But what about the ergonomics? It reminds me of the RG351P, M and MP, but due to its size, you get your hands full here. In the case of the RG351MP, the console rests comfortably on top of your middle finger. The RG552 being bigger, it rests on top of your ring fingers. But of course, that will change from hand to hand. Going back to the MP, I think it's already difficult to use both analog sticks and the shoulder buttons at the same time. I don't think it's very comfortable. And on the 552, I think it's even worse. You need to be a bit of a contortionist to use both sticks and the shoulders together. And I do have big hands. But being a retro handheld device, most games you're gonna play here won't require that combination of buttons. But it's good to be aware of that limitation. But in general, it's very comfortable. And when I looked at the back of the console for the first time, I thought my hands would block the air intake vent here, but it's not the case. The way I hold it, my hands won't really block the vent. About the size, it's almost 8.6 centimeters high, around 20 centimeters long, and almost 2 centimeters thick. For comparison purposes, I have it here side by side with the GPD XP, here with the Palkitty X18S, RG351P here, the PS Vita, over here with the RGB10 Max, and to wrap it up, side by side with the recent released RETROARCH Pocket 2 Plus. After the size, let's have a look at the weight. It's fairly heavy with 356 grams. The GPD XP, it's a bit heavier with 374 grams. The Palkitty X18S is a bit lighter with 307 grams. The RG351MP is smaller and made of metal with 270 grams. And the RGB10 Max, which is around the same size, but it's not that premium, weighs 213 grams. Now let's check the boot time on Android. Almost 26 seconds, that's fairly fast for an Android device. Now the boot time with the Linux operating system. a bit over 16 seconds on Batocera, also quite fast. I bought my RG552 without any games on it, just with one memory card with Linux on it, cause I wanted to put my games. And to use Batocera, you just need to stick the system card in the first slot here, TF1, and the second memory card on TF2 for your games. When you boot the console for the first time, it will create automatically all the system folders for you. After it's done, you just need to turn off the console in a safe way, pressing start, quit, and then shut down system. Now you can remove the card, put on your PC, and you'll find all the folders with all the systems supported here, ready for you to put your games on them. And to do that, you just need to drag and drop your games in their respective folders. GBA to GBA, SNES to SNES, and so on. When you're done, you can eject the card and put it back into the console. And if you copied all the games to their right places, the 552 will find all the systems automatically. And to start a game is as simple as choosing a system with A and pressing A again on the game you want to play. And when you start a game, most systems will be like that, in full screen. I don't really like playing like this. I'd rather play with the 4:3 aspect ratio, as most of these systems were supposed to be played originally. And to modify this setting, you need to press the F button and the B button together to go into the RETROARCH menu. Go into Settings, Video, Scaling, and choose the option 3:4. It's a bit strange here because the ideal would be 4:3. But for some reason, this device reads the screen vertically. So in this case, you choose 3:4. This way, the game looks great. You don't get a stretched screen with deformed characters. You will get those two black bars on the sides, but I do think it looks better this way. But of course, this is the way I like playing it. I know people that prefer everything in full screen. In the end, it's up to you. I'd say a lot of people would prefer the Batocera interface, being easy to use and the front end looks great. I personally like using Android. And to boot on it, you just need to remove the Linux SD card and power on. On the Android side, Anbernic used the ATV launcher. It's a cool launcher that gives the interface a more handheld console look. The console already comes with several standalone emulators pre-installed and the RETROARCH. I like to use standalone emulators for more difficult to emulate systems, like PSP or DREAMCAST. And I like to use RETROARCH for more easy to emulate systems like SNES or SEGA Genesis. And those 8 and 16 bits look amazing on this display, especially if you turn on the integer scale. Starting a game, you can go into the RETROARCH menu, go to Settings, Video, then Scaling. In Aspect Ratio, you choose Core Provided. This way, the emulator will choose the same proportion as the original system. Right above, you turn on Integer Scale. And with those options, you have perfect pixels on those systems, with 5, 6, 7 times the resolution of the original games. And I can tell you, the games look fantastic. I've never seen anything like that before in another handheld console. It's just beautiful. And since we're talking about how things look, let's talk about the display. It's a bit over Full HD with 5:3 aspect ratio, and it's gorgeous. One of the best I've seen on a Chinese handheld. I don't think it justifies the price tag here, but I do believe this is the best image quality you will find on those systems that I mentioned. Everything looks beautiful and alive, with awesome colors. Let's do a quick comparison with other displays. Here, I've got SEGA Genesis Sonic with the same image in 3 different handheld consoles. The RG552, the RG351V, and the RGB10 Max. And in all 3 consoles, the brightness is at 100%. Comparing the 552 with the 351V, besides the playing area being much bigger on the 552, even with the integer scale on, we can easily spot the color difference. Looking at the colors here at the top, the yellow and the red, we can see that the 552 have much more saturated colors. On the RG351V, the colors, they seem a little bit more washed out. And I do believe the RG351V has one of the best screens amongst those handheld consoles. Going to the 552 and the RGB10 Max, once again the 552 wins in gameplay area. And I think it still wins in brightness. The image is brighter here, as you can see comparing the ground over here. and again more saturated if we look at the letters again on top. I think the colors have more fidelity on the RGB10 Max, if you look at the sky here, or even Sonic. On the RGB10 Max, he's really blue, but in general, besides the perfect pixels, I still think the image looks much better on the RG552. Now let's talk about the audio. The RG552 can reach the maximum of 94.6 decibels. It's got a clean sound, but it does lack a bit of bass. The Paukiri X18S is a bit louder, reaching almost 99 decibels, and it has more bass than the 552. The winner here is clearly the GPD XP, reaching almost 111 decibels. The sound is excellent, with awesome bass. But let's try a few games. I won't worry too much about 8 and 16 bits because they play perfect here. They all look great in this screen, especially GBA due to its original aspect ratio. Being 3:2, a bit widescreen, it looks great. Pretty much all the arcade games from the early to mid 90s will play just fine. Even this Burglar X, a game where you are a thief and need to fart your way out of the cops. Good times. Nintendo 64 is another system that most games will play with a steady FPS. Nintendo DS also looks great here. The original PlayStation also plays very well. You can upscale up to 3x the original resolution. Sega Saturn, just like the original PlayStation, plays pretty much without issues. Dreamcast looks really good, and it's a joy to play here.
Time up. Penalty kick.
PSP is a system that's perfect for this screen. You'll be able to upscale up to 2x, but depending on the game, you'll have to do a few tweaks here and there.
Round one. Fight.
GameCube, just like in other portable handhelds, will be kind of a hit and miss. Some games will play 100% like Paper Mario, but other games will leave you hanging. It's try and error here, but you'll still be able to play quite a few games.
Told me to do it.
And even without the 5 GHz Wi-Fi, I was still able to play some xCloud. I couldn't get L2 and R2 to work with the official Xbox app, but they were working fine using the browser. In Halo Infinite, even though I didn't get any hiccups during the gameplay, the input lag was a bit of an issue. I could still play, but I wasn't enjoying it. I think if you must play xCloud on a 552, it's better to stick with RPGs and games that don't need a lot of precision. So, what's the conclusion? I do believe the RG552 is too expensive for what he offers. There are a few features missing that should be included in a retro handheld console in this price range, like the 5 GHz Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth. Those two features alone would make this device a lot more attractive, cause with this high quality display, in this size and this aspect ratio, it would be a great candidate for xCloud. Especially with the HDMI out included, and with Bluetooth, you'd be able to add wireless controllers to it. A couple of other things that bothered me is the battery that only lasts 3 to 4 hours depending on the game you're playing, and the location of the function button on the bottom. A few times I reached to it and end up pressing the reset button. It's just a small thing, but it takes out of the experience. But I really can't finish the video without telling the good things that really impressed me on this device. The build quality is great, something you would expect from an Anbernic device. That goes from the whole body to the controls. It really gives you the feeling of a premium device. The display is fantastic. I know it may sound like a broken record because I mentioned that before, but with good brightness, beautiful and saturated colors, it's the best image quality you will get from retro games from 8, 16, 32 and 64-bit systems, running these games 5, 6, 7 times their original resolution. Other features worth mentioning: HDMI out, that I know it's important for a lot of people, is the super fast charging, and the dual boot option, Android and Batocera. There are other handheld consoles to consider in this price range, like the Palkitty X18S. It is a bit cheaper, also has an HDMI out, it's got better specs, so you'll be able to run more systems. It features Bluetooth and dual band Wi-Fi, and also runs Android. But in my opinion, it's got poor ergonomics if you plan on playing for a long time. Not to mention the controls. This D-pad here is horrible, and the analog sticks are too small, and you can't press on them. You don't have L3 and R3 here. And the display is also not great, lacking brightness and saturation. Another option, a bit more expensive, would be the GPD XP. To be honest, this is one of the retro handheld devices that I own that I spend most of my free time on it. It's basically a cell phone with modular controls attached to it. It's got a very good screen, even though this aspect ratio is not the best for retro gaming. It's got great interchangeable controls, but it has a small issue of the A button being too close of the right analog stick. And it's perfect and very comfortable for the xCloud, with the disposition of the buttons here being the same of the Xbox controller. And it's more powerful than the X18S and the RG552. So if you like the Anbernic 552 and maybe you want to pick one up for yourself, I left the purchase link in the description of this video. Buying with this link, you don't pay anything extra and you're giving support to our channel's content. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one, and maybe share with a friend or two. Once again, Gilly here from the Retro Oasis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.